Principal Analyst, Creative Strategies.
There you go. All right. Well, welcome back from lunch. We've got a good panel. Hopefully, everybody is not going to have food coma from all of the food that they've eaten. I'm going to let these distinguished gentlemen introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into it. Kedar?
All right. Thanks, Ben. It's great to be here. I'm Kedar Kondap, and I lead the compute and gaming business at Qualcomm.
Great to be here as well. Dave Hickey. I'm with Verizon. I feel like I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm the guy that runs all the sales teams, and so we sell all the complex solutions that you put together every day. So been with Verizon for 20 years here in Southern California, but handle mid-market space for Verizon as well.
Awesome, and I'm Tom Butler with Lenovo. I'm the executive director in charge of the ThinkPad commercial portfolio globally. So very excited to be here because we're using these two gentlemen's technologies, the technology inside and the connectivity outside.
There's a lot of synergy on the panel, it seems like. So topic-wise, we're touching on hybrid work. Obviously, everybody, I think this isn't a secret that we've been in an interesting environment, and we're now post-COVID going to a sort of hybrid scenario that I think we still don't know what that's going to look like, but we know it's going to be there, and the role that PCs and connectivity play in that. Tom, you guys got a little plug this morning. It's one of the 5G PC conversations we're having, and I think you've got some eye candy that you might want to talk about and show everybody.
I am a product guy, so I'm not going to show up without a product. But yeah, it's actually a very exciting time, and as Christiana's talked about this morning, it's really the emergence of PC as a connected device at the edge, or part of the edge network. And Lenovo, from an innovation perspective, has been leaning in for actually multiple years in partnership with Qualcomm. Announced the first 5G-enabled device, or connected device, announced the first 5G millimeter wave device. And then most recently, it was actually mentioned this morning, we announced the first ThinkPad, which is the first business-ready compute device or PC device with 5G and millimeter wave. And it's the first platform on the HCX Gen 3 platform. And it's come about really in partnership with Qualcomm, but also with Microsoft for over 3 years partnership. So 3 years ago, we got together and we looked at this space, and we were looking at what was it going to take to become a business-ready device. And from a compute perspective, looking at the performance, and so that rise from HCX Gen 1, Gen 2, and now to Gen 3, significant increase in performance in compute, as well as the AI engine that couples with that. And it's also the ecosystem. And so looking at the compatibility of the applications, the OS, and driving this device into a seamless experience from a business perspective. So looking at the productivity apps, the deployment apps, the management and security apps, and in partnering with Microsoft, Qualcomm, and Lenovo, and in going out to those software providers and in partnering with them to drive to a native solution. And so it really culminates with the launch of this product. And yes, I will plug it because I've got it. But it's a fantastic, super thin, super light device. But I can tell you that about really any laptop that I have in my portfolio. The key difference is the connectivity and the battery life. So you have, for the first time, true autonomy of the device. And by that I mean it's not only autonomy with connection, so the 5G or millimeter wave, but also the battery life. So we get 28 hours of battery life with this device. So it's the first PC in market you can truly separate yourself from the power adapter. So I was on multiple flights yesterday. I had some cancellations to getting here. It took me about 12 hours. I should have landed in Rome instead of landed in San Diego, coming from the East Coast. But I used the device throughout the day. I used it for productivity, for work. I also used it for entertainment. I streamed video, watched content. I never powered it down. I never put it to sleep. When 12 hours later, I got into my hotel room, I looked at my power. I had 30% of my battery life left. And that's amazing. And so that's really the power we're able to unlock with a device like this. And then in the end, it's a ThinkPad. So it's built tough, it's built for business, and it's ready to take on the world's challenges. And it still works, by the way. Yep.
Well, and I think it's an important point, actually, that that your connectivity and millimeter wave is in a ThinkPad. You know, if you know the history of the ThinkPad business, that's not one where, you know, early technologies come out. It's trusted as a brand. It's trusted as an enterprise player. So to have it in that technology, I think, is just a justification that it's, you know, more than ready for the prime time.
Yep.
So Kedar, a little bit on the ecosystem. Obviously, you've got carrier partners like Verizon here and OEMs. What's the overall investment that you guys are doing from an ecosystem standpoint to build this out more?
Yeah. So overall, I think, you know, just as what Tom was saying, we're very excited about the Lenovo device in particular. I'm using one as well. And I encourage all of you to try it out. It's definitely a very different experience in terms of battery life and a lot of the capabilities that you'll see. When you look at you know, how 5G plays a role in all of these devices, there's a lot that we can do in terms of bringing different partnerships with different ISVs. I mean, the reality is there's you know, already you know, 86 operators and, you know, multiple carriers that have launched 5G globally. So it is mainstream right now. And you know, if you look at some of the applications for that you think about in terms of a hybrid environment, we're going to be working anywhere. We work from the office, sometimes you're going to work from home, or you're going to work from the cafe. So the ability for us to try and make sure that the ecosystem is ready, we are working with a lot of partners. Just to put things in perspective, right? When you look at 5G plus AI, Cristiano talked about it a lot in his keynote, but it is really important to understand how this ecosystem is going to work. Just to give you an example, right? Microsoft Teams, they had about, I guess, 75 million users in 2020. And as you see how they ramped up, they've ramped up to about 280 million users by 2022. And there's a lot of focus in terms of partnerships like this, where they use a lot of the heterogeneous computing cores that are enabled in Snapdragon. They integrate a lot in their a lot of the ISVs integrate that in their applications. And you can see there's a huge benefit. I'll give you another example, Zoom. We've partnered with Zoom. And if you're using Zoom on a device today that's based on Windows on ARM or Windows on Snapdragon, you'll see a huge difference, you know, close to about 30 to 40% difference relative to what you'd see from a competitive device. So there's a lot of partnership that we have going on in driving the ecosystem, driving our enablement to make sure that the industry is ready, because I do believe this entire Windows on Snapdragon experience is going to be pretty transformational.
And even as we're on the cusp of this, some of those investments and work you guys are doing include just ease of sign up, right? Some of those pain points we've all seen early on, because that's a big thing to get over, is just making it easy for people to quickly get a connection, whether, again, they're a carrier, customer, or whatnot from sign up.
Right, absolutely.
So switching a little bit to digital transformation, this has, I think, been a hot topic, right? Anybody that studies this knows that, you know, what we've seen is essentially a rushing forward of an investment because of the pandemic and budgets that were there for digital transformation. And there's debates about this, which I still think is interesting, right? Is this investment going to continue? Is it going to be scaled back? We've seen numerous reports from different, you know, analyst groups or forecasts some saying yes, it's going to continue. Some say it's going to be scaled back. But Dave, what are you seeing from Verizon's standpoint in terms of investments?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I mean, if you rewind back and you think about when the pandemic hit and the rush to people to put the systems in place, what we found now a couple years later is there was a lot of patchwork, right? And they were able to put some things in place, but not necessarily to sustain them going forward. And so at one point we thought maybe we were going to see a good lull in endpoints and things that they were purchasing from us. But we've seen the reverse of that. You can see now in the culture of what they're actually looking within their environment is how they take and embrace digital. And think about my workforce today, we really have identified it as hybrid. And so you're in the office a day or 2 days a week and you're out in the marketplace. But it really is when it proliferates with 5G being able to come available, that's what's made the biggest difference. And so the end user now can go and have deployable assets wherever they want within the United States and have the right type of connection. As you and I were talking about earlier, like the ability to have a connection at your home, the same sustainability that you would need in the office place, and to run all those applications above the network is critical. And so you deploy different services, and you've seen these businesses all the way from the IT manager to the office manager to a CIO, really looking at what their the applications that are fixed today that were bandwidth intensive, and now they're saying, how can I move them into the environment? And we were talking about this earlier, is like, think about where business is transformed. Even if you're in the office, you're on a video call. And whatever you're using today, well, that clearly has changed how we communicate and get things done. So you need things like mobile edge compute that we're absolutely, and Brian Meekum hit on today, of where we're sitting and partnering with the clouds. You need to be able to really advance that. The availability for fixed wireless access, right? So business grade internet across the country in places where you weren't going to be able to dig up the ground and bring a fiber to your house. Those things are what the customers are asking for every single day. And I think the advancement of these type of products that you're talking about, business-ready devices that you can deploy quickly, think about that you're able to have image-ready laptop out there and be able to deploy it with those type of services on it. And what we're seeing from customers is they're on the ground floor saying, okay, I need analytics, I need to understand what's happening in the environment, I need to be able to see how my end users are operating and using the experience, and I need to do it quickly and fast, and do I have everything in one place that I can be able to grab that? And so I think the biggest opportunity is education. There's a lot of platforms you can go on, a lot of places you can do it, and you can do it for very inexpensive to really expensive, depending on how complex you want the environment. And so that's what we're seeing from our customers every single day, helping us, can we educate them and really help them stay connected with multiple devices? And that's what 5G does, is think about all those endpoints out there that now are enabled, which require a whole different level of connection.
So when you look at your sales teams, the conversations they're having, is they're still seeing a commitment to budget, to one, increase transformation, but also I think some degree of future-proofing that comes into that, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to know that you've got platforms in place and bring your devices up to speed or get new devices, if you will.
For sure. They're trading, they're investing in where I invested maybe in hardware, now I'm looking at the software to enable it as well. And so absolutely is on the roadmap, and they're talking about those. But they're also seeing, they're taking the cost or the expense maybe they had in offices and other places and being able to transfer that over. And there's lots of techniques that people are using, like how do I enable someone's personal device, right? How do I take that and make it happen versus a corporate device? And we could argue all day long which way is better. It just depends on the end user. But for sure, they're absolutely looking into the investments. And you'll see that as especially these new SMBs that are starting up, because we saw a lot close during the pandemic, their model of how they're doing business and their digital footprint is totally different. And so they're coming out of the gates efficient as well. And that means those that are around are having to upgrade to that point.
Yeah. And I think in certain times of uncertainty, great businesses and great industries make those investments. And so, Kadar, what are you guys seeing now in terms of the upgrade of both devices, right? The intelligent edge things that you guys have been investing in as more of those businesses invest in this infrastructure?
Yeah. I think, overall, obviously, as we look at, I'll just hit on a little bit of stuff that David was talking about. When you think of what Verizon has done as an example, at Qualcomm, we are embracing this 5G in a big way, right? We have millimeter wave adoption throughout our campus. We have devices that work well. It obviously saves a ton of cost for everyone to run coax cables and stuff. So overall, I think the infrastructure is getting ready, and what happens is now as there's a very interesting data point that I learned about very recently, which is about the growth for cloud is about 35% year on year. And then if you think about how this plays into the data generation, the prediction is that by 2025, more than 65% of the data is going to get generated outside the cloud. What that means is it's going to get generated on edge devices. And so what that absolutely means is that these edge devices need to be very intelligent. And that's exactly why we talk about intelligent edge. And from Qualcomm's perspective, we're obviously investing to make sure that the PCs that we're talking about, they're very intelligent in terms of taking a lot of the pedigree that we bring from not only having low power, high performance, but also taking huge advantage from 5G and AI, and the blend that we bring in terms of heterogeneous computing. So whether it's getting help from Verizon with a strong infrastructure, or with Lenovo, where you saw at least one of those devices that supports millimeter wave. There's other devices in that I'm sure you're going to hear about, if not already, in terms of XR, handsets. So overall, huge focus from us in making sure that we have the infrastructure ready and that the intelligent edge devices are ready. And it's great to be partnering with Lenovo and Verizon to be enabling all of these activities.
Nice. So let's talk 5G PC use cases. Mm-hmm. This is a category that so many of us have wanted to have happen for so long, and it was sort of like we expected. We're making predictions about how big the market could be, and then it got off to a really slow roll. And so when you guys look at obviously the market that you've identified, right, who you're going to go after first in terms of the convenience, right? Because a connected 5G PC has a number of values, but convenience is a big part of it. What are some of those other use cases that you guys are going to focus on, especially in this hybrid environment where people will be on the go, hot desking or hoteling, like they like to call it?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. We launched our first 5G ThinkPad November of 2019, which is not a great time considering what happened in the first quarter of 2020. Right. And we all shut down. So we're thinking, here's my most mobile connected device. Everybody go home and stay home. And so, when we were looking at this, sort of forecasting the model, of course, this was pre-pandemic. And then as we've watched what's happened, as we interface and talk to our customers, and we're interviewing and discussing with customers all the time, the emergence of, I'll say, hybrid work 2.0, because the first wave was we all go home, we go into a safe space, your remote location, but now we're emerging into a reopening. We're having this in person, some of us in person. And so now we're back on the go, we're back to, as you said, hoteling, hot desking, connecting. And the most important, actually top 1 through X, for any CIO, CTO that I talk with is security. And the security of the device and the security of the connection. And the absolute certainty that that device is connected securely. And you can't do that if you've allowed your geographically dispersed workforce to just connect to any Wi-Fi random hotspot that's available and hope for the best. So that 5G always on, always connected element brings in that level of security, because I've got this meshed network of distributed endpoints outside of the perimeter, and so I can maintain that uptime, I can maintain that security, I can maintain the patching and the updating. If I have a day zero threat, I've got the most latest patch, and I've got the reliability. I don't have a device that goes dark, becomes a dark endpoint, reconnects to potentially an unsecure or unreliable Wi-Fi source. So that's one element. And then it's that last mile. Actually, Cristiano mentioned it this morning, as we went to a work from home model, many did not have the bandwidth to support, and especially the video telephony that we're all used to now, the video collaboration. So trying to drive across a video image without breaking or losing the quality of service, and maintaining that connection, because in the end, that's the reason we went to video, was to maintain the human connection and the collaboration that we all need, that we all had in the office, and we're now using remote. So having that reliable uptime in the 5G. So when you start talking about use cases, it's really wide open, full circle. When we talk personas within the workspace, of course, it's going to be the travelers, the frequent travelers, the sales team, the field workers, the executives, but then the connection back to the home. So some of this hybrid model, there may be some of the end users that stay in a work from home model and sometimes come in. Reaching that last mile can be achieved with 5G as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned security, and that's, again, one thing that's come up in a lot of our conversations with IT managers. And recently, on some research we did, I was actually really intrigued to find out that the Office of the CSO is now involved in a good number of those decisions that IT is making. So obviously that comes down to the network side, Dave. So what are you guys seeing or doing on the network security side as well?
Yeah, it's a conversation that when we walk in and talk to a customer, they're either fully educated on everything they want to do, or they have no idea. We're getting every spectrum of it. And I think there's a perception that if they've protected one point on the network, they're good. But when you go and you look at, like we have our data breach investigation report, all these reports that put out, like 85% of those breaches had human interaction with it. So as you come in, that means there was some sort of scenario which was causing that to happen. Phishing was 36%, was up 25% year over year, continuing to gain. And so you have these bad actors that are doing things. At the end of the day, what we're seeing is the solution is you have to have this depth in security. And it means how do you protect the PC? How do you protect the endpoints as well? But part of it is this always-on network that you were talking about, and can you communicate and you see the devices? So we're deploying, absolutely, we have every type of solution and work with so many great partners, many of them here in the room, that from a mobile device management, we're able to take care of stuff as well. Then on the device itself, and then the back-end network, what we're able to put up and deploy with firewalls. So I would say the customers, what they're looking for is simplicity, right? How can I do this today? Think of your average SMB that potentially has 15 to 30 people working for them. So that means they have anywhere from 30 to 100 devices they're looking to protect. And so how can I deploy something quickly for them as well? And clearly there's always a cost that comes in the game. But what happens, what we see a lot is they'll protect one portion, a ransomware scenario comes along, and you know the statistics. In 2 years, those customers are out of business. And so we're doing a lot of effort right now as far as educating what is kind of good, better, best solutions and partnering with on it. But it's definitely a need that's out there, and it's a need that needs to be thought of from an investment perspective, needs to continue to be on the line item for all those CIOs out there.
Yeah, I think security continues to be one of the most defensible budgets by IT, no matter what environment that they're in. So, and I think that's an underappreciated part of the 5G connected PC story. You just think, well, I'll get connected, but being connected securely in any environment that you're in really matters, especially if you're in sensitive environments.
That's right.
So could I maybe talk a little bit about some of the AI work you guys are doing? I mean, everything we're talking here from QoS at the network level to security, battery life management, right, is ingrained in a lot of the artificial intelligence you're embedding into the processors. Maybe talk a little bit more about the work there.
Sure. When you think of the Windows on ARM or the Windows on Snapdragon portfolio, one thing is very clear. Independent of which tier of platforms we talk about, we will have AI and 5G integrated, right? So what happens is, for example, when we talk about AI, we have a dedicated neural processing unit that's integrated in each and every one of our platforms. The way to think about the neural processing engine is, it scales depending on, the tier of products, the use case, but it's very clear that the heterogeneous computing architecture that we're talking about, all of it takes advantage of AI. So let's take an example. For example, we talked about a hybrid work environment, and we talked about the ability to work from home, work from a cafe. So there are many things that are actually very, very important, especially as we look at how AI is integrated very deeply with cores like audio, cores like video, right? So you're sitting in front of, you're at home, you're sitting in front of your laptop, you dialed in a meeting. Obviously, if you're me, you're opening a bag of chips, and you're dialing into the meeting, and sometimes you just forget to mute yourself. The ability for AI, what happens is it knows exactly how to clear noise from the system and to provide a clear speech that gets projected on your in your meeting. So there is a big distinction, and if I'm a consumer, I really shouldn't know how that was done, right? So there is a lot of intelligence that gets tied in terms of using the AI core with camera, using the AI core with video, using the AI core with audio. So there's AI that's deeply rooted, including with security. So there's a lot of AI that we talk about that's ingrained in every one of these. So let's say, for give you another example, let's say you're sitting at the cafe, and there's people that walk around you all the time. there's a bunch of stuff that you can do other than just background blur and bokeh effects and stuff. There's things like presence detection, right? You can have somebody standing right behind you, and you really don't know who's right behind. But the ability for your camera and your application to know that all it wants to do is just keep yourself in focus and maybe just intimate you that there is somebody standing behind. So a lot of these use cases, a lot of these algorithms, these are pretty deeply rooted. And how we blend these together, it's really important. And that's exactly why I'm focusing so much on making sure when I talk about 5G, when I talk about AI, and blending all of these with the different cores, I think it's going to change the way we're using some of these PCs in the next several years.
Well, and I think when you think about it, AI, as we like to think about it, isn't just tied to one architecture being right. Snapdragon, right? It's a whole philosophy of how all of the puzzle pieces fit together, right. Camera, audio, NPU, any external bit. And so tying those together is really the whole solution being an architecture, not just one right chip. So when it comes to the devices standpoint, Tom, how do you guys think about more broadly enabling AI, whether that's with Qualcomm or with Microsoft or other parts of the ecosystem? Yeah,
when you think about, and Kedar really touched on the use cases, so much of our time is now using these devices as a video collaboration tool, as a communications tool. And so, like you said, if you're sitting remote, how do you join into an in-room meeting and become a meaningful contributor versus just a side screen, sort of looking in. So the use of the AI capabilities of taking away those background noises. Again, if you're connected remotely, you've got a lot of variables to deal with, whether it's connectivity, whether it's, again, the background, the activities going on, noises around you. How do you overcome that? And how do you become just another person as part of that room in the collaboration? And it's both in using the NPU or the AI engine that also helps offload from the compute, so you still have the performance capability of the device. And it's also in concert with the hardware. So as we sat down with Qualcomm and sort of mapped this out and co-developed, co-engineered the platform, we also heavily increased the performance of the camera. Pre-pandemic, no one was asking me about a camera. It just didn't, it was like, how many people were using video calls before 2020? Very few. Now everyone's using video calls, and so there's a massive amount of pressure on bringing quality camera to the experience. And so that was part of what we did as well, is drive a better camera. In fact, you probably can't see this here, but there's a communication bar, an accentuation of the camera, because it has higher quality. We have array microphones across the top, which give you that spatial awareness, which helps to, in concert, pair with the AI engine and eliminate the potato chips crunching or the dog barking or the UPS truck delivering, which happens very frequently when I've been working from home. And so that all contributes to, now when I join into an in-room meeting over video, I'm a meaningful contributor, I'm a meaningful participant, and I'm just part of the discussion in the room. And that's the fabric, and that truly is, I would say, the hybrid work 2.0, which you're still going to have a distributed team, but there are going to be more and more, there will be smaller groups that perhaps come into the room, meet, collaborate together, but are pulling from other team members remotely. So you must have that meaningful connection. Otherwise, you'll lose the remote employees. They'll abandon because they're not engaged and they're not part of the team. And so it really does, it lends itself. And AI, we're really just at the beginnings of the capabilities, because it's going to unlock the productivity as your device can recognize what you're doing and throttle up, throttle down on the need. It's going to help you with security. You can start thinking about, not only am I looking at you, the user, but is someone looking behind me over my shoulder, and I can block out or alert you. So again, the awareness of the device's awareness of what you're doing and how you're using is just really in the beginnings. So we see AI as an accelerant towards the use cases, the experiences, and then the contribution to productivity, security, and ultimately collaboration, the connection back to the teams.
Yeah, I think, and you pointed out a couple things too, right? It's not just the security in terms of your network security or confidence for IT. There's a privacy element of that, right, to the end user as well that gets sprinkled in. It's interesting. I'll just sort of close with this observation. Having been in this industry for a while now, not to simplify it, but there was a time where a silicon vendor would just bring a part and sell a part, and people would do what they with it. And there's just a lot more collaboration now in terms of, again, the network side, the chipset side, the software side, and the devices side. And it really is a much more robust relationship than really at any point in time in history when people were buying devices. So I think that's a positive for the industry. I think it brings a lot of value in terms of the differentiation in those core experiences, but it's a lot different now than it was 10 years ago, I'm sure, making PCs and selling chips and network. Yeah. So cool. Well, thanks guys. Thanks. Let's you join me giving them a hand and move on to the next panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Amedeo Macedo, Head of Technology